All right, I'm gonna try and give you a close-up view of the drop hoses working. Okay, that's enough running for me. 41 years old, I don't need to be wasting all my heartbeats on running. Well, you ready to put the sprayer through its paces today? We got a lot of spraying to do. I'll tell you what, I could get used to this. Maybe I need to demote myself more often. All right, we just topped Zach off with the last little bit he needs to finish up the soybeans. We're run back to the shop and we're gonna get loaded up with some liquid nitrogen, some 32% UAN. So he's already got the drop hoses and the orifices that we need to run the nitrogen in the middle of the corn. So while I'm filling up, he's gonna be putting those on the sprayer.
All right, so what we got is, Matt came up with these drop hoses a couple years, and all we do is come out to the field, get our tires spread out, get our strainers and our proper orifices, regulate the flow on these things, and we just get them mounted up one at a time. It doesn't take long to do it. It just requires being out in the field to make sure that it's lined up properly on the road.
Got all the water drained out of the truck. Right here, this is our water tank. So we're gonna disconnect the hose here. And we got two nitrogen tanks. That one's filled all the way up, a little over 6,000 gallons. And this one's filled up just a hair over 5,000 gallons. So 11,000 gallons is about what we're gonna need to cover our corn, or at least our early planted corn. Should get over about 370 acres worth or so. So let's get it changed over and get this thing filled up. Zach's gonna be waiting on us. It's gonna take a while. All right, a little over 3,000 gallons later, equivalent to about 17 tons of fertilizer. We're loaded up. Get on back to the field. Zach should be waiting on us. He's already over here. Looks like he's getting the drop hoses rigged up. All right, what we got going on here, we're applying liquid nitrogen through these drop hoses because the liquid nitrogen can severely burn the corn crop if it gets on the leaf. Streaming it down through these hoses into the middles. And once it gets incorporated into the soil profile, once we get a rain, then it will mix with the soil moisture, and the plant will be able to take it up there. All right, got all the drop hoses installed and just right. Now we got to mix them up a load. Well, there's really not much mixing to do with liquid nitrogen, but we do have to add a nitrification inhibitor in on this, because what we're spraying is 32% UAN, that's urea ammonium nitrate, and urea is 50% of the mix, ammonium nitrate is the rest. And urea is a form of nitrogen that when it's on the soil surface and it's hot like this, it can basically turn into a gas and can go back into the atmosphere rather than getting down in the soil where we want it. So we'll use this Infix, got MBT, it's got MBPT in it, and that's actually a urease inhibitor. It will keep that urea, that actual nitrogen form for about 7 to 10 days. Hopefully by then we'll get a rainfall to get it incorporated in the soil before it wears off. All right, now we're getting the boom primed with nitrogen. We'll know when it's primed when we see the blue color. And the other reason is because you can't see the tips from up there because the hoses are dragging on the ground. Want to make sure that all of the hoses are putting out evenly. There, I got one nozzle body didn't get turned here. We don't want it spraying out. I'll show you what we're looking for on corn on proper timing of the nitrogen application. The corn plant actually starts forming the size of its ear around the V5 to V6 stage. It starts determining how many rows of kernels around the ear will be, otherwise how fat it will be. So making sure you got the proper nutrients there at that time is critical, otherwise you could wind up with a bunch of ears that are smaller size than what they could have been. So we want to time our nitrogen application around the V5 stage if possible. Now look at the corn plant right here. You look and see how many collars the corn has. And a collar is where is at the base of the leaf where the leaf is fully emerged and is starting to wrap around the corn plant. So we got the first leaf here that's pretty much died off. So that'd be V1, V2, V3, V4, and right there at the V5 stage. We got one over here next to it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right at the V5 stage. Some of the corn that maybe wasn't stressed as bad is around the V6 or so stage. Let's walk over here and take a look at one spot. The corn in this particular field looks pretty puny because this is only the second year I'm working this farm. And there was a lot of compacted ground right here because this is where they did all the truck loading and everything. So it looks kind of puny. Don't have a lot of organic matter built up in the soil, but we're working on that. All right, got a little bit better corn over here in this spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, this one's almost V6. So we're right here at the proper timing to apply nitrogen to make sure we've got maximum corn yield, or at least the maximum corn yield we can have at this point. We haven't been too hot to try to get nitrogen out because, for one thing, we haven't had any rain in, well, we hadn't had any rain in close to 2 weeks. It's actually starting to get a little dry out here. Some of our real thin spots of corn starting to twist up, get a little darker shade in the heat of the day. And I mean, it's pretty hot out here. It's about 90 degrees. So, I mean, all we can do is apply nitrogen to the surface of the soil right now, but until you actually get a rainfall to incorporate it down into the soil, it's just sitting there and it's at risk of being lost to the environment. Like I said, gassing off, even with that nitrification inhibitor, because it only lasts so long. So we've now got a 60% chance of rain in 2 days on Wednesday. So we're trying to time it as close to the rain as possible, because putting it out any earlier really wouldn't have benefited because it wouldn't actually get into the ground and be exposing it more to the weather. So we're trying to time the nitrogen application as close to the rain event as possible. So that's one reason we delayed spraying the soybeans earlier this morning, because the residual chemicals to keep weeds from coming up also need a rainfall to get them incorporated in the soil. And the longer the chemicals lay on the soil surface exposed to the sun, they can break down and become less effective. So that's why we waited this long to get all this applied. We now have a good chance of rain in 2 days. Hopefully get all this stuff incorporated and everything will work like it's supposed to. That's all depending on if we get a rain on Wednesday. If we don't get a rain on Wednesday, well, we're applying all this stuff and the benefit of it is going to be reduced. So when thinking about nitrogen, there's several different forms of nitrogen. There's several different ways to apply it. About every farmer's got their own preferred methods. For one thing, you can apply it dry in granular form and apply it with a dry spreader. That's what we did at planting, is applied our first go around of nitrogen dry. However, applying it that way has a couple of drawbacks. The one benefit is that it's quick and easy, and you don't have to mess with this handling this liquid fertilizer, which is a pain. But the problem with dry fertilizer is that it's all urea, so you have to use a greater rate of NBPT on it, which increases the cost. Also, if you get a really heavy downpour shortly after application, within a day or so, it can actually pick up those prills of fertilizer and float them to wherever the water drains. We actually had that happen last year. We applied dry fertilizer on our corn for side dress. Is it washed all the nitrogen from on the side of the hills down in the bottom of the terraces. Now that year I made about 300 bushels per acre in the bottom of the terraces where it settled out, but up on the hillsides I made about 135 bushels per acre. So after that we decided to start applying liquid. All right, looks like Zach's ready for fill up. We'll get him filled up real quick, and I'll talk about the other forms of nitrogen.
Well guys, after a brief intermission for changeover, I'm already about 65 acres in. Down in this big bottom, we're averaging like 30 gallons an acre on application. So we are rolling through fertilizer. As well as this corn already looks in this bottom, this corn down here is going to show out this fall. When I get over to the other side of the field, I'll kind of show you what the screen looks like, what I'm looking at on my end. All right, so here's what I'm looking at. This is the run screen I like to keep it on. I like to keep my map just as big and wide as possible so I can keep up with my coverage. But that brown in the background is actually the application shading. It varies just like it did on the GS3 monitor when I was spreading potash this spring. With this screen that I'm on now, I can keep track of absolutely everything. My gallons per acre required, my machine pressure, my pump pressure, my boom height, my auto guidance, everything I'm able to keep up with on that one screen, which is great. But anyways, you didn't really get to see the process in the old sprayer of how to download the prescriptions. Matt already has the sprayer synced up with his John Deere account, so there was no plugging in USB cards, downloading, having to delete, making sure you don't lose your field boundaries, all of that stuff. Didn't lose any of that. All I had to do was change the product to a single product, just put in my product, and then on my prescription I can go through and just keep up. I can pull all my prescriptions from there, and as soon as I pull it, it automatically throws the coverage on the screen, so I'm not having to go through a separate screen, go find my mapping, put all that in. It's just 3 or 4 steps completely eliminated just by this Gen 4 monitor. So I'm just racking up the pluses on this thing compared to what we're used to running, and it's just light years ahead of where we were and what we had.
All right, getting back to what I was saying about nitrogen application, after dry, you got liquid nitrogen. You can either use 32% UAN or 280004 UAN, or at least that's the forms that are available in our area. And the 32% UAN is actually 32% liquid nitrogen mixed in with water. The 28% was 28% UAN mixed in with water. Each gallon of 32% UAN has about 3.5 pounds of actual nitrogen in it. And it's actually the most preferred form of nitrogen that most people around here use on corn, mainly for the factor that it's one of the cheaper forms of nitrogen. It's cheaper than dry fertilizer. But where you get into is you got different delivery methods of it. We prefer to run it through our sprayer, through drop hoses, and dribble it in the middle of the row. Most farmers around here prefer to actually inject it in the middle of the row. That's why they got injector rigs that the tow behind tractors. They use a coulter to slice open a trench in the soil, and it puts the nitrogen down in the soil. The one big benefit of doing it that way is that the nitrogen is already in the soil you don't have to use a nitrification inhibitor, which actually makes it a little bit less cheaper. However, the drawback to that is that it's definitely a lot slower than applying it the way that we do, and you're going to tear up more corn because the rigs aren't going to be as wide. You're going to turn around more on the inrows. You're going to run over more corn. You get on some sharp curves. If you don't stay perfectly on the row, you got the chance of the trailing rig to go around and destroy some of the corn. So, and it's a whole lot slower, with the only benefit of the form of nitrogen is a little bit cheaper. So I like the way that we do it because it works just as well. It puts the nitrogen right there in the middle, even though it's on service. But we can get across the acres a whole lot quicker, a lot more timely manner. We don't tear up as much corn as we're driving through the field. We could also stream it on like we do on our wheat with our streaming nozzles. However, at this time of year when it's hot and sunny like this, any liquid nitrogen that actually lands on the plant leaf can actually burn it real bad, which really doesn't cause any yield loss at this stage of the game, or at least tests have shown it doesn't increase any yield loss, but it can't be good actually damaging the leaf plant. You got extra point of entry for diseases to get in, and I mean, just losing any kind of photosynthetic tissue cannot be good. We did that a year or so, but if you apply it the wrong time of day, and you won't know until after the fact, but there's just certain environmental conditions that really increase the leaf burn, whereas there's other environmental conditions where it does just fine. So rather be safe than sorry, we're running the drop hoses. Normally I'm the one in the tractor or the combine and not in charge of support operations. But I tell you what, I could get used to this. Maybe I need to demote myself more often. I don't know what Kelly's complaining about when she runs a water truck all the time. It's kind of nice. All right, 30 loads off this truck. We headed back to the shop to fill up. Hey, Zach, I'm going back to fill up. Let me know where you're going to need me to come to next.
10-4. Do you, it doesn't give me any of the farm averages. That way I can tell if I'm putting out too heavy or not. Do you know what the farm averages for each field is?
I don't know. I mean, your maximum's going to be around 35 gallons per acre, and your minimum's going to be, probably in that 15 to 17 gallon per acre range. I don't remember off the top of my head what the averages for it are, but as long as your gauge is going down to around 0 gallons when you run dry, you should be doing right.
All right, now that we've been out here running for a little while, I just want to climb out here and make sure all my drop hoses are lined up. Haven't moved any. Give me a chance to stretch my legs for a second. Get this one back in position. It's kind of off to one side. Everything else looks good. Looks like it's still pretty much dead center of the row. I'm gonna climb out here over to the edge and make sure that I'm meeting the opposite side of the row that I finished on. So it's gonna look like I've got a 1 row overlap on my screen, but it's actually putting me just on the other side of this plant instead of me skipping over a row. Everything looks good. I guess I'm gonna climb back in here, finish this farm, and move on to the next one.
All right, I'm gonna try and give you a close-up view of the drop hoses working. Okay, that's enough running for me. 41 years old. I don't need to be wasting all my heartbeats on running. All right, this makes load number 6. A total 5,300 gallons we put out today. All right, well, that's going to be the last load of the day. We got a lot of our corn ground covered. Should be a real easy day tomorrow getting the rest of it finished up. So I reckon I'm gonna call this a video. Kelly be out here tomorrow morning to help Zach finished up. I've gotta be back at the dentist. I don't know if you followed the community page, but 2 weeks ago I had to have a root canal done on my tooth, and supposed to go back tomorrow to have it ground down and fitted for a cap. But unfortunately, I don't think the root canal took. It flared back up again about 3 days ago, so I imagine tomorrow, instead of getting fitted for a crown, I'm probably going to have a tooth extracted. Oh well, no big deal. It's only the third one I've had to have pulled from having a tooth crack on me. So, the big problem with this one is that it is up close to the front of my mouth, so it'd be pretty noticeable if I don't get a bridge or something else. More money down the drain. Rate I'm going, I might just have all my teeth pulled and get dentures. But anyway, enough whining and crying. Appreciate y'all watching. We'll see you in the next video.